conference, and I think it's so far been really a great success. And it's really due to a lot of partners that we have, our institutional members. I want to recognize our gold sponsors, Cardno, our friends at Creative Associates. I also want to give a special shout out to my friends at FHI 360. Thank you, FHI 360. Thank you very much. The friends at Futures Group and GRM International who are with us, as well as IRG. Thank you all very, very much for supporting the conference. There are many institutional members that made this very much possible, and you've heard some of the other organizations listed earlier, but I needed to recognize them first. I want to also recognize my friend and partner in this work, Ken Lanza, who has chaired the program committee. Could you please recognize Ken again? Thank you, Ken. Thank you very, very much. It's been a huge undertaking, and I think if you've seen from the quality of the program, it's been the work of many people on the program committee. Take a look at the list. I'm going to screw it up if I list every single person, but there are many of my colleagues on the board and others took a lot of time out of their schedules. They're very busy people to help make this happen, so I'm very, very grateful. I'm also very grateful to Dick McCall. Are you here? I don't know if Dick is here or not, but Dick, along with a number of other folks, led the fundraising efforts that helped make this financially possible. I also want to thank Dana Cade. I want to thank Courtney. I want to thank Sally. I want to thank Femi. And there were several other folks. Is it Elaine, I think, who was also one of the folks who helped with, among others, who spent a lot of time on the team to help make this happen. So I really want to thank the folks in the Sid Washington team for making this happen as well. So please give them a warm round of applause. Okay, I have also really a personal pleasure to just signal that we are going to have the Andy Rice Award in a few minutes, or maybe now. My friend Bob Berg, who's a board member of SID Washington, a former board member of SID International, and it's just been a tremendous support to us this year at SID Washington, and was a great help at the SID World Congress, is going to be emceeing the Andrew E. Rice Award for Leadership and Innovation. I think it's to a person who's very deserving of it. I think you'll all agree with me when you understand the awardee, that I think it'll reflect the spirit of Andy Rice, who many of you know, and was the founder of SID, the SID movement, or the SID network, if you will. But then we're also going to have, I'm going to hand the stage over. I think Lael Brainerd is going to be joining us in a few minutes. She's not with us yet, but she is really a very, very gifted public servant. The country is very fortunate to have Undersecretary Brainerd, and she is the point person for the Euro crisis for the U.S. government. So the fact that she's agreed to join us, I think, speaks to the importance that the Obama administration gives to development, but also the fact that how the importance that she sees the importance of international development, that she's taking time out of her busy schedule, especially at this time, to be with us. So I'm going to ask everybody to enjoy your meals. I think, Bob, you're going to make a presentation now. I'm going to turn the stage over to you, Bob.
It's one of the wonders of SID that a wild-eyed liberal like Dan Runde and a very conservative guy like me, actually it's the other way around, could like each other and find common ground in this place. Some of you senior managers will remember my cheeky admonition of a few years ago. I told you not to send us routine nominations for the Andy Rice Award. We appreciated when people attended the office every day and all that, but we wanted real stars. And you were kind enough not to throw your plates and briefcases at me when I said that. Instead, you got down to business and did what you do best. You read the specs, you figured out how to meet and beat them, you submitted proposals that made us want to give numerous Rice Awards. You took us seriously, and we thank you for that, because you have proven not that you are just great proposal writers, but that you have a real inventory of creative talents who are the promise of our profession. You made the work of the Andy Rice Award jury seemingly impossible, even though we have a pretty talented committee led wonderfully by Inga Hawley, joined by Asif Sheikh, Alina Ziskovsky, Sally Wally, and with their generosity, I sit in too. This year we had to select among a whole bunch of nominees who have started their careers in the spirit of Andy Rice. Innovators who bring along their colleagues with grace and brilliance, folks who aren't clawing over their colleagues to get to the top, but respectful team builders, organization enhancers, people who lift themselves by lifting the whole crew. Young leaders whose commitment to serving others is transparent and inspiring. People dedicated to the profession of development and to service organizations, particularly SID. Now, everybody can't jump over all those hurdles, but a lot of them did. And I love the nomination of a brilliant woman who bravely and effectively fostered major women's organizations in the toughest parts of Yemen. I admired the woman who commuted every day from Tel Aviv 3 hours to Ramallah and 3 hours back to help bridge communities. And oh, I so wish our foreign aid program in the Middle East subsidized more of these bridge building initiatives. I was inspired by a number of high-tech innovators who, for example, are using open enrollment distance education programs as part of what is clearly going to be a tsunami change in higher education. I wish we could bring you each of so many of these nominees to laud them individually. If you were nominated this year, the odds are pretty darn good that you are quite special and quite promising. So keep at it. You're off to a good start. So what were we on the jury to do? Well, an amazing thing happened. We had done some major scheduling jujitsu and set aside 3 hours hoping we could possibly reach a final decision, and we came to our decision in 15 minutes. There's nothing more frustrating than sitting there in a meeting where you've accomplished everything you're supposed to accomplish, and you can't go somewhere else because, you know, you'd be too early for your next meeting. So we foolishly talked about the weather and our kids and, you know, all this stuff. But that 15 minutes told us that we had a clear winner on our hands. You probably read about Hannah Poole in your program. She has a cheering section here from PACT, as well as her fiancé. Right on cue. When you hear about her, you will join the cheering section. She is a serial innovator. For example, she started a commercial and development enterprise to help some of the poorest women in Africa overcome the embarrassment of needing sanitary pads in order to attend school. She's a livelihood creator, fostering an entire program of microfinance initiatives. She was willing to take a break after major success to get a master's at Harvard, and I do hope they know how lucky they were. And father of a daughter that I am, I just loved her being inspired by her father, telling her to wake up each day to face seemingly insurmountable problems and to tell herself, just make it happen. She is already a change maker in an institution where she has worked only 18 months. I hope all our institutional members give running room to stars like Hannah Poole. With immense pride in her young and promising life, and knowing that the heritage of Andy Rice is in safe hands, it is my joy and pleasure to present the 2012 Andrew E. Rice Award for Leadership and Innovation by a Young Professional in International Development to Hannah Poole.
It's a bit heavy, so I'm leaving it over there. Thank you so much. Thank you to the board of the Society for International Development in Washington, the selection committee, and particularly to my colleagues at PACT, Sherry Bush, Graham Wood, and Huntington Hobbs, who truly supported me and nominated me for this award. I can't thank you enough. This is really a special award because of the man for whom it's named. Andrew Rice is one of the architects of international development and an individual who really did bring people together across the world. And I am truly humbled to accept this award today in the company of such esteemed colleagues such as yourself, who I deeply respect and have so much still to learn from. What I've learned as a young professional is that to make change in the world, you have to believe in the mission of your organization and to be tenacious about bringing that mission to life. I've also learned that you never achieve anything alone. In 2009, I stepped off a plane in Kigali to launch Sustainable Health Enterprises. I was one of 4 women who started this social enterprise to help girls and women have access to low-cost sanitary pads so that they wouldn't miss school and work. We had a business plan. We had a very small amount of money, but we had a ton of passion. I was the one who was tasked with moving to Rwanda to start up the operations there. As Bob alluded to before I left, my father sat me down for a lecture. He'd started a couple things himself and had some advice to pass on. Getting comfortable, I expected, the lecture that I normally get from my dad, but instead he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "Hannah, what you're about to do is difficult. It's never easy to start something, but every day you have to wake up and you have to say, just make it happen. Just make it happen." So that was the mantra that was in my head as I walked across the tarmac in Kigali. But the problem was, my dad didn't tell me how to do it, or where I should start, who I should talk to, or what I should say. And to be honest, what I learned is that starting a conversation about sanitary pads and menstruation isn't exactly the easiest icebreaker. So I had my challenges set out for me. But I worked hard to make our idea for an organization a reality. But what I didn't realize on that tarmac was that when you're dedicated to a mission, others will genuinely also want to help you too. I learned that if you can inspire others, that inspiration can have a ripple effect. And so when you think you're standing up there alone, in fact, you actually have a community around you. Just as an example, I recall one woman in Rwanda, Christine, who became a fantastic advocate for us. I told her that I wasn't sure how the supply chain would work, and we were looking into banana fibers for how to use them to make the sanitary pads. And I think within a week, she organized 100 different women's co-ops who were doing banana fiber processing, and it was just incredible to see that. I could never have done it on my own, and she was such a huge help. It was just an example of how every time I turned around, someone was willing to give me advice, help me solve a problem, or give me the name of someone who could. What I realized that it wasn't me alone that was just going to make it happen. It would happen with the support of a growing community and with people who are equally passionate about our mission. I left SHE's Rwanda operations in the capable hands of a Rwandese woman, but the lessons I learned in community mobilizing and team building have stayed with me to help me take on even greater challenges in my work since. At PACT, where I'm now a technical lead on our livelihoods programming, I was asked to be part of creating a new microfinance entity. Knowing how challenging it can be to start a new entity, I was willing and ready for the challenge. But what I didn't realize was that the team members at PACT would be so dedicated, so passionate, and so supportive of one another that it was really quite easy in the end to do. What I'm saying is that I know that no one makes anything happen on their own. So, while I am absolutely delighted to win this award, I cannot thank you without acknowledging all the people who have helped me along the way. My colleagues at PACT, who have believed in me and have supported me, to the people who helped me get my start, my career in Ghana, Tanzania, and Rwanda, and of course to my family, without whom I would really be nothing. Awards like this let us know how our work is appreciated, But most importantly, they give us cause to stop and remember the wonderful people who have been with us every step of the way. So on behalf of those individuals, it is my honor and my privilege to accept this award. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I have a privilege first to congratulate Hannah again for her great work supporting women's empowerment, improving livelihoods, and furthering social enterprise. My name is Kishore Rao, and I work with Deloitte Consulting. This is a really fantastic forum that brings together the international donor community as a whole. And this conference really gives us an opportunity to come together and have genuine dialogue, and I appreciate that very much. Deloitte is proud to be a platinum sponsor of this important event, and we appreciate SID's power to convene all of us as a community, and we certainly want to thank you for and recognize you for your continued leadership in this important task. And this is especially a difficult and challenging time, so I want to just take a moment to recognize all of us and give ourselves a round of applause for the work that we're doing in international development. It gives me great pleasure to be here, especially because I'm here to introduce Undersecretary Brainerd. Deloitte has been a proud member of the international development community for over 25 years, in many instances, in many roles, and we are really committed to this business and this enterprise that is really important to all of us. And we strive to help donors and implementing partners make a sustainable and meaningful impact by drawing upon our experience of working around the world. And we're a network of member firms, locally owned member firms in 150 countries. There's about 180,000 of us worldwide. And so we try to bring that fresh perspective of innovation and thinking to our commercial, government, and nonprofit members globally. And these words of extensive and diverse experience, a track record of innovation, and results are some of the words that have been used to describe our esteemed keynote speaker. And I Googled her and looked up and talked to colleagues that knew her. It turns out one of my colleagues actually was a classmate of yours. But Lael Brainerd serves as the U.S. Department of Treasury's Undersecretary for International Affairs, where she's advancing U.S. leadership in the global economy. And prior to her current position, she held various leadership roles with the Brookings Institution, where she was vice president and founding director of the Global Economy and Development Program. In addition to holding the Bernard L. Schwartz Chair in International Economics and directing the Brookings Initiative on Competitiveness. And previously, she served in the Clinton administration as Deputy National Economic Advisor and Deputy Assistant to the President on International Economics. Undersecretary Brainerd also held positions with academia, specifically at MIT Sloan School of Management, where she was an Associate Professor of Applied Economics. I hope I got that all right. And I'm very honored now to introduce Undersecretary Brainerd.
Well, sure, thank you for that very kind introduction. And I'm delighted to be here at SID. I haven't had the pleasure for a few years, but it's always a great event that I relish taking part in when I can. I want to thank Dana Cade and Dan Rundy in particular for inviting me to be with you today. And I must say, it feels a little bit like being at the Academy Awards. Congratulations to Hannah. That was a great story. And this is so much better than what I'm going to do with the rest of my day. So let me just say it's good to be here with so many friends from the development community. Together, we are working to address important challenges to help poor communities achieve food security and poor children get the nutrition they need, to help young people to secure skills and jobs, and to strengthen economies by engaging the full productive potential of women. Together, in short, we're working to address one of the greatest challenges of our time, achieving more inclusive growth here at home and around the world. We're working to achieve growth that is shared across generations, especially for young people who inspired the Arab Spring. We're working to achieve growth that is shared across gender, especially for women who, by building better lives for their families, transform nations. We are working to build growth that reaches across geographic lines by connecting remote communities to local markets, landlocked countries to ports and regional markets, and regions that have been left behind to the rest of the world. In some countries, people under age 25 make up 60% of the population. The majority of these young people are coming of age in developing countries, many in Arab countries and in Africa. These young people are on the move, moving from rural areas to urban centers, seeking education and skills to contribute to society, seeking employment and opportunities to launch enterprises and start families. They are demanding opportunities to shape their societies and now to lead them. The lack of inclusive growth for the young generation was a major catalyst for political and economic change. Young people led mass protests and uprisings in Tunis and Cairo that brought us the Arab Spring, a window of political and economic transition full of hope and of peril. These young people are seizing control of their own destinies and inspiring others across the globe to do the same. Youth are the largest and potentially most dynamic segment of the global population, but they face unemployment rates near 30%, and those that are employed are often trapped in low-wage work. In Egypt alone, nearly 650,000 new job seekers enter the labor market every year. Even as many economies were growing, young entrepreneurs could not start enterprises. Education systems were not geared to providing 21st century skills. Graduates waited years for a first job, unable to afford to live on their own or form their own family. Even the rule of law did not adequately protect these young people, both men and women. When I visited Cairo, I met founders of Nadet El Maroussa, an organization devoted to expanding opportunities for young Egyptians. I heard how they successfully mobilized to start career centers in Egyptian universities so that students have access to information and necessary skills to secure jobs, a revolutionary change. I heard their hope about a new chapter in Egypt's history. These young people are voting for their president for the first time. Today, that hope is echoed in Tunisia and Libya and far afield. Today's youth are tomorrow's future leaders and contributors to society. That's why it's so important that we support these transitions. In 1989, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, as Central and Eastern European countries left communism behind, the world turned to the multilateral development banks to assist. The world is confronting a similar opportunity today, and again, the development banks are rising to the challenge. The World Bank and the African Development Bank are hard at work providing support for job creation, accountable governance, credit for small and medium enterprises, school-to-work programs, and infrastructure. We are leading an effort to expand the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development so that it can provide support to Arab countries in transition, supporting the private sector, vibrant small and medium-sized enterprises, and jobs, much as it did in the Central and Eastern European transition success stories. Together with our G8 and Gulf partners, we are working together in a platform for cooperation, the Deauville Partnership with Arab Countries in Transition. We're launching a new multilateral transition fund to provide targeted grants to support innovative reforms, to again spur jobs and private sector development and better governance. And in coming days, we will sign a loan guarantee for Tunisia to strengthen market access for the new democratic government, hopefully the first of many such innovative enhancements in this critical region. We can unlock sustained and shared growth by tapping the potential of the next generation, not just in Arab countries, but also the many young people throughout sub-Saharan Africa who are hungry for jobs and full of potential. We, of course, must also work to capitalize on the full productive potential of the world's women, who are too often left out and left behind. Women account for the vast majority of the more than 1 billion people worldwide living on less than $1.25 a day. When we invest in these women and provide them with more access to information and resources, we enable them to invest in their families and thereby their economies. That is why gender must be at the heart of development. When women are supported and empowered, all of society benefits. Even advanced economies, as you know, face challenges to unleashing the full productive potential of women. In fact, the first piece of legislation President Obama signed into law was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act to help American women get the same pay for the same work as their male colleagues. Also, within his first few months of office, President Obama created the White House Council on Women and Girls, which is launching initiatives to support women-owned small business, address pay discrimination, promote women in science, technology, engineering, and math. This year's World Development Report validates the importance of gender equality for society as a whole. The report shows that giving women secure ownership of land and access to inputs like fertilizer can increase agricultural output by up to 4%. Granting women access to management positions heightens the pace of innovation and technology adoption. The World Bank's Doing Business report has dramatically increased the visibility of policies that affect private sector growth and spurred reforms. Isn't it time that we did the same for women? Wouldn't it be great if countries competed to demonstrate they have the best legal, regulatory, and policy environment to unlock the enormous potential of women and girls for development and for growth? In today's hyper-competitive global marketplace, no country can afford to squander the potential of 50% of its creative minds and productive citizens. And of course, no sector is more important for poor women than agriculture. Investments in agriculture are critical to reducing rural poverty and ensuring children have access to nutrition during their critical growing years. Women farmers contribute up to 60% of labor on farms in sub-Saharan Africa, and women achieve similar yields when given equal access to training and services. The Global Agriculture and Food Security Program takes these lessons to heart as it sets a new standard in development effectiveness. In Rwanda, smallholder farmers, especially women, are seeing significant increases in productivity, with potato harvests quadrupled in some places on a per hectare basis, and maize output by up to 300%. This has meant income gains of nearly 90%. Smallholder farmers are transforming hilly landscape with hoes and shovels. It's heartening to meet young women hard at work, their babies slung across their backs, who now have good jobs and access to health care for their families thanks to GAFSB. The program has also spurred job growth for elderly workers and for women widowed during the genocide. GAFSB is responsive to country needs, providing nearly $500 million in grants to 12 countries in the first 2 years alone, aligned with homegrown strategies. In Haiti, farmers have more than doubled yields. In Bangladesh, they've had their first ever surplus of rice. We need to invest in GAFSB to continue its transformative role in reducing rural poverty and helping the nearly 1 billion people, mostly women, who remain food insecure. At the recent G8 summit at Camp David, President Obama called on the world to make GAFSB a lasting institution by raising $1.2 billion for this fund over the next few years, and the U.S. stands ready to do its part. Development is at its core about connecting people to opportunity, remote smallholder farmers to markets, landlocked communities, and countries to regional trade routes and regions to the world. Sub-Saharan Africa is among the least connected region in the world, with noticeably low levels of interregional trade and high infrastructure needs. It is host to an unusually high number of landlocked states. By supporting regional efforts at integration, we can help these landlocked countries access ports and boost trade and livelihoods. We're investing in both institutions and infrastructure to connect these communities to regional markets and from there to the global economy. When we invest in roads, railways, airports, harbors, and communication system, we drive inclusive growth through connectivity, facilitating the movement of goods, services, people, and ideas. Through an emphasis on regional infrastructure in the African Development Bank and the World Bank, we're prioritizing sub-regional integration pioneered by African leaders and investors. We're working with the development banks and the East African community, as well as with investors, to assist them in making their community a reality by developing rails and roads and warehouses, connecting power grids, integrating payment systems, strengthening trade, and fighting food insecurity. Treasury's technical advisors are working inside finance ministries and central banks to help create cost-effective, efficient, and timely regional payment systems that are too frequently neglected critical connectors for trade and growth. And we're working with Commerce and USTR to ensure that as roads and bridges and electricity grids are built, trade and commerce follows close behind, and to ensure that American businesses get the first opportunity to share in Africa's enormous potential for growth. Ensuring that growth is inclusive and fair requires strong institutions and strong governance. Governments must be equipped to execute the core functions of providing public services effectively, managing public finances transparently, and developing budgets that reflect shared priorities. Nowhere is this agenda more important than in resource-rich countries where too often the benefits have not been widely shared and governments have been corrupt and ineffective as a result. The United States led in requiring publicly listed companies to report how much they pay governments for access to resources, and we're hoping other major financial jurisdictions will join us. As more countries in Africa and around the world develop resource wealth, we will work to support transparent and accountable systems to ensure that wealth is shared across generations and across society. Over the last few years, the United States has faced important decisions on our leadership in promoting development, important decisions at a time when resources are tight here at home. We faced a once-in-a-generation decision to provide new capital across all the multilateral development banks after their strong and decisive response to the financial crisis. We faced the decision to recommit support to grant mechanisms like IDA and the African Development Fund. When food prices spiked, we faced critical decisions to provide support to address global hunger and malnourishment. When the Arab Spring started, we had to find ways to support countries to remain economically stable so that democratic transitions could deliver on their promise. And at a time when many questioned U.S. commitment and resolve to lead the world on these issues, together we have proved them wrong. Thanks to bipartisan support and strong partnership with the development community, the United States is again leading on the most important challenges of our time, working to ensure growth is grounded in strong governance and shared across generations, gender, and geography. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Undersecretary Brainerd has kindly agreed to take a couple of questions from the audience. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask. I understand you just got back from Europe, and so I'm sure you have a number of things you could report on there as well. Does anybody have any questions? We've got the mics, roving mics as well. Dan?
Almost don't need a microphone.
Yeah.
Undersecretary Brainerd, thank you so much for your leadership, and we really appreciate you coming today.
Could you talk a little bit about how you see what's happening in Europe? Because I think it does impact development. I think it impacts what's going to happen in terms of global growth if things were to go awry. I think it also impacts ODA in terms of other countries as well, in terms of just some of the things that are. If you could just talk a little bit about how you see what's happening in Europe and what your hopes are for an outcome there.
Well, Dan, as you say, we have tremendous stakes in Europe succeeding, in Europe managing successfully the challenges that they face, and that's why we have really, since day one, over the last 2 years, worked very closely with our European partners to help them develop tools and institutional evolution to manage these challenges carefully. Europe is our biggest trading partner, with 15 to 20% of our exports going to Europe at any given time. Europe is a key ally, and of course, Europe is our key development partner, and so we have been hand in hand with Europe both on our bilateral assistance and working through multilateral mechanisms to support growth in what are now many emerging countries and as well as in developing countries. My expectation is that we will see Europe continuing to evolve its policy response and, over the medium term, its institutional architecture, moving to greater union on the fiscal front, greater union on the financial front. These are critical complements to their monetary union. And we are working closely with them in the run-up to the Los Cabos summit, where we want to also make sure that all the emerging markets are working with us and with Europe to support growth that's important within our countries, but it's also critically important to sustain the progress we've achieved so far in developing countries.
Any other questions? Right here.
Thank you. I'm Joan Galloso now at George Washington University. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Treasury's role in some of the anti-corruption efforts, because issues of good governance are critical to the overall success of development programs. And you said you had people in finance ministry. So what's your sense of the status of anti-corruption efforts, and what's Treasury doing, and how do they work with USAID? Thank you.
Well, we are kind of inherently, I think, centrally involved in the U.S. government's efforts to help developing countries combat corruption, because our counterparts are the kind of critical central parts of governments in developing countries that are responsible for the budgets, for collecting taxes, for supervising the financial system, enforcing anti-money laundering and other efforts. So we have both a kind of unique entry point, and we also have a unique technical approach on some of these issues. Treasury has a kind of a jewel that many of you may know about, but not everybody does, which is what we call the Office of Technical Assistance, which has been in place since the period of transitions in Eastern Europe, where we have advisors, many of them who have worked previously in finance areas, in central banking areas, in debt issuance, in anti-money laundering and counterterrorism finance, advisors who are really in the most remote parts of the world, often sitting inside finance ministries. For instance, Finance Minister Ngozi in Nigeria is a huge supporter of this program because she was, in her previous capacity, a big beneficiary of this. And the other way, of course, that we support anti-corruption initiatives is through the way we go about working with the development banks, who have also tremendous capacity, not just through their own projects, but through their policy loans. So if you look in Tunisia, for instance, the World Bank's first policy loan to Tunisia was all around strengthening economic governance, improving things like freedom of information, ensuring conflict of interest kinds of provisions were in place. And of course, they have tremendous capacity through the assessments that are required before they undertake infrastructure investment. So we work hand in glove with USAID and the State Department, and we provide different channels to promote the same agenda. But where there are reform governments, we have a huge commitment to help them achieve their aims.
Other questions? Undersecretary Brainerd, I wondered, before you go, if you could say a quick word about China. Obviously, they're increasingly prevalent on the development stage, but take very different approach to development than we do. And I just wondered if you might say a word about some of the things that they're doing and how we're addressing that.
Yeah, so China is a big presence, particularly in many resource-rich countries around the world. And that's both an opportunity and it's a challenge that we need to engage with them closely, I think, to manage. China's approach to development can be quite different than the one we've taken, particularly in the development banks and through our bilateral assistance programs. As you know, we have social and environmental impact assessments that are quite rigorous and procurement policies that are very rigorous through the development banks. And our general view is those policies are helpful not just on the projects that the development banks are financing, but also because they help to spread similarly transparent procurement practices and awareness of environmental social impacts when developing countries are undertaking other infrastructure projects. China is less prone to undertaking the same kind of rigorous analysis ahead of time, and often these investments are driven more by their own kind of quest for access to natural resources. And so we're engaged in a dialogue with them because at the end of the day, our goals are quite similar in these countries to ensure that these countries have governments that meet the needs of their people and are governments that promote development. And so we will continue to work closely with China to continue the dialogue. But I think the most important antidote we have to investments in developing countries that don't enhance governance, don't have the requisite environmental and social safeguards, is to continue strong U.S. leadership through the development banks. And again, that was one of the critical, I think, motivating factors as Congress contemplated this set of capital replenishments, again, historically unprecedented across all the development banks at the same time.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, we'll take a break for about 20 minutes and see you back in here at about 2 o'clock for the plenary panel on international development. Would everyone please join me in giving a round of applause to Undersecretary Brainerd.